What's going on, guys? It's Red Bull Tanker, and welcome back to Axis and Allies 2016. This is turn 12. Well, it was actually quite the turn, and actually ended on a complete fluke. So let's get into it. All right, starting off with the Russians. The Russians were able to get 2 mech and 2 tanks down to Volgograd, and they did retake it from the Commonwealth forces that had taken it the previous turn. Excuse me. And then they also launched a cruise missile at Rostov and took out an American infantry, and then basically put all their purchases in Russia, preparing for the big battle against NATO for the city. On NATO's turn, NATO spread out throughout the Middle East a little bit. Took they came down and took Iraq. They went up and took the Caucasus. They took Smolensk, took Archangel, and then just kept funneling their troops to the area to prepare for the final, you know, to prepare for that final attack over on Moscow. Um, if, Trying to double check. I think that's pretty much it for Europe. I mean, they put some reinforcements in Germany, Norway, St. Petersburg, southern Italy. Yeah. All right. China. China did not have a good turn. With what they had of their fleet, they once again tried to break through the Allied Navy around Tokyo to try and land an army and try to take Japan out of the game and buy them some time. That sea battle ultimately failed, and the Chinese retreated. And then China sent a mechanized force to try and retake Hong Kong, and that also ended up being quite the disaster. And China lost all of its ground forces. Over uh, and seeing the dire straits they're in, they put forces in Beijing and Shanghai. Okay, for the U.S., we'll go back to Europe first. The U.S. In a very close fight retook Volgograd. They walked into Samara. Over in the Pacific, they attempted to launch a crew. The 2 bombers here. The stealth was in Guam. The B-52 out of Japan tried to launch a cruise missile attack against Shanghai, which was a failure. The U.S. walked into Guangxi, and then the U.S. launched a major assault into Manchuria and was able to grab that from the Chinese. Now, just like in Europe, both Moscow and Beijing are now under threat from the Allied forces. Over to, let's see here. I mean, at the end of the American turn, I mean, they're just kind of getting their stuff into position, um, all around the map, and getting ready to send these guys back home, getting troops in position to possibly have to take on the attack in Moscow. In India, India retook Iraq from NATO and launched 4 cruise missiles into Sea Zone 8. They brought the 3 subs that were bombarding Diego Garcia, which actually, hold on. Oh, no, they weren't supposed to. Oh, those subs couldn't have reached. So, 1 second. So, if anything, 3 of those come back. You guys are stuck here. The Americans would get their carrier back, but it would be damaged because there was still a hit, because there were the 3 submarines and then the air base from Israel that launched. So retroactively, I guess what we could do, because they went 1, they would have only been able to go 1, 2. No, I gave them their missiles back. That'll be fine. And then they put down some reinforcements because they got to get ready to protect the Middle East. Even though it does look like the Allied effort is going to be put on, finishing off Moscow. Over to Japan. Japan didn't do anything. They just dropped a destroyer to replace their losses from the fleet battle. And then the Commonwealth, and this is where the fluke came in. I wasn't paying attention, but the Commonwealth came up, took Malaya, and ultimately gave the Allies their 17 victory cities because of Singapore. And I caught that right before I started the video. And I mean, even if we went another turn, it is very, China can't retake Hong Kong. No one can retake Singapore. Vladivostok's out of the way. I mean, Russia could try, Russia could send their 2 transport helicopters down to send 2 infantry to try and retake Volgograd, but that's risky. I mean, they could take some transport aircraft and they could take their 2 transport helicopters and try and drop infantry into Warsaw, but they'd have to fight. They'd have to get through the AAA screen first. So I mean, in a sense, I mean, none of the conquered victory cities looks like they can really be retaken. And I mean, granted, they took the 17th victory city on the last turn, and I can't remember, like, if you were to play regular Axis and Allies, and the Anzacs captured the final victory city on their turn, I think the Allies technically would win that game. Though I've hardly ever seen a Axis and Allies game where one side gets all the victory cities. It's usually like it just kind of becomes inevitable that someone's losing. So I mean, that's, like I said, kind of a fluke, but that's it. The Allies win with the 17 victory cities, just as both sides were about to go at it in the Battle of Moscow. And I mean, I don't think the Americans would have attempted an attack on Beijing this turn. It probably would have been more of a slower game and getting reinforcements to Manchuria before taking the final stab at Beijing. But even then, without the Singapore accident, I confidently state that Moscow probably would have fallen, if not on the NATO turn, maybe the Americans, or even maybe these 6 Commonwealth infantry could have mopped the rest of it up. So that is it. After 12 turns, the war is over. The Eastern Alliance, the Axis, lost the game by victory cities and have sued for peace. In Europe, the Allies were able to liberate Ukraine and other. No, I think the U.S. took Bessarabia, but I mean, Ukraine has been put back together. Obviously, Allied forces will probably back out of Russian territory, so probably back to the Baltic states. But now Ukraine will probably more than likely join. Will be safely in the European Union's sphere of influence. Not a lot of fighting in Africa, except for the Indian taking of South Africa. Well, and I mean, they did take Egypt, but they never came down. I had initially had plans to start moving India down, but once the Russians had to draw forces off from the Middle East, it kind of became imperative that they shift their focus from going into Africa to trying to protect Russia's southern flank. And I mean, South America, I mean, you have Brazil under the U.S., Argentina under NATO, though I feel like around that time, I feel like I don't know. Either these guys would have actually been full neutral, or maybe even pro West. Well, Argentina might have been pro E. I think it would have been. I think Argentina still would have been like the pro Axis, and Brazil would have been pro Ally. Honestly, but I guess I'd have to look into the state of relations between these two nations in the West and Russia. Um, I mean, India probably did the best of the Axis powers because it didn't lose any of its territory. It regained all the territory it captured by the end of the game. China honestly was doing very well for the longest time. They just the naval battles just were not there for them. And then once the U.S. really set foot in Vladivostok, I think that pretty much was kind of signaling the end for China and their dominance in the area. All right, well, again, that's it for this playthrough of Axis and Allies 2016. As always, I'll do a separate after action video and go over a couple more things, and from there, discuss what we might be looking forward to in the future. So that's it for now, guys. So until next time, as always, take care.